I don't even know where to start. I really don't. I've got a really bad cough. I just have no words. I've just finished Anna Todd's After Ever Happy. The title confuses me every time I look at it. So many thoughts are going through my brain. I can't quite cope. When I say I've literally just finished, I have literally just finished. And I feel like a part of my soul will never be the same. It's so weird. I just feel emotional just thinking I've just finished all those books. So stupid, because I didn't even, it's not like I loved the ending. I didn't even cry at the end of the book. I just feel emotional at the fact that I finished them all. And they just meant so much to me. It's stupid. What is wrong with me? Get these tears out of my eyes. Honestly, I need to get a grip on life. I finished this book just over 24 hours. Yeah, I started it yesterday and I finished it today. I don't even know where to start with my thoughts on this book, because I wanted to cry at the end and I wanted it to be everything and more, and it wasn't that. I still loved it, obviously, and I would still recommend this series to everyone, but it just didn't end the way that I thought it would. I can't say any non-spoiler sections because there's been 4 books. I can't not say anything. So if you haven't read After, again, I will repeat myself until I'm blue in the face. Go out, read it, and then come back and listen to me waffle about the last book. I say the last book, there's 5 books in the series. You've got 1 to 4, and then you have 5, which is set before the first one, but you have to read all 4 first and then read the 5th. I don't know if that makes sense. This series consisted of, hang on, 2,643 pages. I went out of my way, just out of curiosity, because I read it on my Kindle, to see how many pages that is. I read almost 3,000 pages in 2 weeks. Look at all of these books I'm now about to show you. This is the size of the series. That's not fucking normal. Oh, I wish I had them in paperback. I really do. But hey ho, they were expensive and I just got them on Kindle. But it's almost 3,000 pages in 2 weeks. I don't feel like my life's ever going to be the same again without these books. So, spoiler. I just don't know how to feel, like I keep saying. I just feel so emotional, the fact that I finished this series. I haven't, for the past 2 videos, I took time and I've done notes, and I don't want to do that on this one. I don't know why, I just don't. As I was reading, I took like some screenshots, or like I took pictures of my Kindle, so I've got like some quotes and stuff. We were left from book 3 on the bombshell that Hardin's dad is not Ken, it's actually Christian. They were still in London, and like I said at the end, I didn't know how he was going to come back from that, and it sort of all went off the rails for him. Like I knew it would, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't know how it was going to pan out. We obviously saw him being the guy that we knew in book 1, being really destructive and violent and turning to alcohol and drugs. I don't think we've ever seen him turn to drugs in the books before. It's not something I like to read. I'm really sorry. I'm really like out of breath. I've got this really awful cough at the moment. I need to get myself an inhaler. So yeah, we saw him sort of turn into the guy that we don't like, turning to violence and sort of going down his old path and meeting up with his friends in the UK that he used to hang around with before he went to America, and blah blah blah. The whole situation happened in the UK, and he sort of like sent Tess away, and she was like, I'm not backing down and just going without a fight, because he left her suitcase outside Kim's, like wherever they were staying, the hotel, and she went to that like that house party where they were like just high on drugs and drinking, and he had that girl wrapped around his waist, and all of that happened. I just thought, I don't know if I can read it. Like I just didn't want to read them be toxic again. And she went back to America and he stayed in the UK, drowning his sorrows, becoming completely off his face, that he didn't even know what was going on. And then the scene happened when Tess went back to the apartment to clear out her things, and sort of get her life back on track without Hardin. And then we saw Tessa's dad in the bathroom. I didn't think that he died. It just didn't click with me. The fact that he was there with like a needle hanging out of his arm. It obviously then came out that he died. I thought, the way when I read it, that she would have finally realised that her father's issues are a lot more than what she thought, because she's quite naive, I think. She thinks the best of everyone, or tries to not dwell on bad things, I guess. Not a bad thing. I thought it would have been like, oh, he went to rehab and then he relapsed and was still like addicted to drugs. I didn't think he would die, and that took the book on a really interesting turn for me, to see her become Hardin and Hardin become Tessa, and she couldn't find the light at the end of the tunnel, and he was there and was that support for her. So the whole time Landon was trying to get hold of Hardin when he was in the UK to say, look, this is what's happened, but he was too busy. He wasn't, the thing is, when he was in the UK, he didn't really deal with his problems. He just sort of drank himself into oblivion. And then when he got the phone call, or he answered the call, no he didn't, someone at the party answered, and then Landon was like, Richard died. That was his waking point, and then he was there for Tess. I liked the whole scene of her. I liked the whole part when she was back at her mum's house and there was Noah and Hardin, and Hardin also being that support for her mum, Carol. I liked that dynamic. I think, I don't know how many times I've said it, but it was like a wake-up call for him, and he realised that this enough is enough, and that was the turning point for him. He fought and fought and fought throughout the rest of the book, which I really liked. I think he finally grew up, and when he paid for the dad's funeral and stuff, my heart just ached for him. That the start of the book was all about him, and then it flipped 180 and then went all on to Tessa, and I feel like the book was mainly on Tessa's emotions this time, as opposed to Hardin, even though Hardin still went through a lot of shit, finding out like obviously his dad wasn't his dad and coming to terms with all of that stuff. We never really got a resolution with Trish. There's a lot of things that weren't answered for me, which really frustrates me when I dedicate that much time into a series. I've taken a picture. My first picture I took of my Kindle was a quote when they were at the funeral of her dad, and he put, I broke her. She just says she says she couldn't fix me. She will never be able to. But my damage wasn't caused by her. I was healed by her, and when she was healing me, I was splintering her beautiful soul into many pieces. Essentially, I single-handedly broke her fucking brilliant spirit while selfishly being stitched back together. The most fucked up part of this massacre is that I refused just to see how much I was hurting her, just how much of her light I had dimmed. I knew it all along, but it didn't matter. It only mattered when I finally got it. When she denied me once and for all, I got it. It hit me like a damn truck, and I couldn't move out of the way even if I tried. Just, that's, oh, just too much. It was too much for my heart. When he called Zed to go and be the friend and support her, I just thought, yes, I agree, like that was a good move on him, trying to be like the adult and being sensitive and caring for Tessa and her needs. But again, you don't bring Zed into the situ, because nothing ever goes down well with Zed. I'm glad that everything was sort of put to the side with all of like the college lot and just all of those assholes. Like, they weren't even really in the book at all. We sort of got a little bit of a wrap up when Steph went to, I want to say like Illinois. We had Molly with one of the guys, I can't remember his name, can't remember it, and then we just sort of like had a quick little wrap up with the college lot, and I think that was done really well. After the funeral and the argument with Zed, Hardin and Tess then go back to Ken's house for a couple of, I want to say it was a couple of days, and then she goes back to Seattle to sort of tie up loose ends. She also had to go back to Seattle for her doctor's appointment, and I said it previously about how like they wouldn't have just said, oh, you might not ever be able to have kids. That obviously then came into play, sorry, in this book, where they pretty much confirmed that the possibility of her having children are very slim, and if she is to fall pregnant, the chance of miscarriage is quite high. She then came clean about that to Hardin, and he didn't handle it in the best way possible because he just doesn't know how to handle his emotions. And I think, again, that was like another nail in the coffin. And the whole time I was reading it, I couldn't gauge where it was going to go. I was messaging my friends and I was like, I don't know if they're going to get together or not. I don't know if I want to read it if they don't get together. Like, I just had no clue of the direction as to how it was going to go, because they were both so, what's the word? They were both just so fiery. You just couldn't predict which way it would have gone. I found out that Karen was pregnant, which I wasn't expecting at all, but again, I guess it was a nice little thing. And then he had his heart-to-heart with his dad, which I really liked. Regardless of what happened, I think he still saw him as a father figure since like all the shit came up, and he, even though he wasn't there in his younger years, he stood for him whilst he was at college and things like that. I don't know, I just really liked the relationship that he ended up having. And I remember reading when he sort of put his arms around his dad to comfort him when he was crying. I say his dad, Ken. I really liked that. I thought it was a nice touch, and we did see a lot, like I've said previously, we saw a lot of development with Hardin and his relationships and how he deals with things. And we still read things that he would normally say, but he thinks about things, he thinks about his actions a lot more. And Tessa finished in Seattle and went back to Ken's house, Landon's house, whoever's house you want to call it. Before she went to New York. She kept hiding New York from Hardin. This is why I should have written notes, because I forget everything. She kept hiding it from Hardin, and I just, again, it's just one of those childish things that you've just got to be open and honest in a relationship. And I get why she didn't want to, because she didn't want arguments and she was afraid. But that's how relationships work, is communication. I went outside for our chat and was like, to start with, Karen's pregnant and I'm also moving to New York. And I just knew it wasn't going to go down very well. Although he did handle it quite well. You see the outbreak happened with Landon, and Landon was egging him on to say, come on, hit me, go on, like, just punch me, go on, do it. And Hardin didn't. And I think Tess then realised how much he had changed, because he would have done it in a heartbeat in book 1, even book 2. So he changed so much, the fact that he didn't do it despite the egging on. Went in to speak to Landon, and I think Landon then made her realise how much she's lost herself as a person since being part of like Hardin's life. I'm getting all these names confused. It's been one hell of a series. And that was like when the penny dropped for her. And then that, I'm not gonna lie, that's when I started to not love the book as much as I wanted to love it, because we went, and I said it to my friend Emmy, who I read it with, we've gone from when she first starts college up until that point in April. I don't know when you start college in America. In the UK it's September, but I want to say, I think they start in August. So we've gone from August to April, literally 24/7, minute by minute, them being together, growing as a couple, fighting, etc, etc. We've gone from that solid 8-month period, or however long it was. He said no, she said that she needed time, went away from Hardin in April. Rouge almost just fell off the sofa. Oh, you poor girl, that must have been horrible. Did you almost fall off? I just had to delete some files off my camera because I was talking too much. So she said to Hardin, look, I need time, we both need time. Again, so much time, but this time she meant it, and she was like, give me space to breathe. And she left in April, and then it jumped to June, which for me was a big jump. It was only 2 months, but it was massive because we've never had that time frame, we've never had that spacing before. And it was at Hardin's graduation. So within that time frame, we see that Hardin has got like a therapist / counsellor that he goes to once a week. He's made some new friends, like he's changing as a person. Tess has obviously been doing whatever she's been doing. She went and stayed with her mum and her new partner David and his daughter, and sort of lived life preparing this move for New York, which Hardin obviously didn't like, but was what it was. Sort of trying to figure out what she wants next in her life, because obviously originally she was going to go to New York with Landon. Landon was then like, I don't want you to come with me until you've sorted your shit out, basically, because wherever Tessa goes, Hardin goes, and he didn't want that to ruin his experience. So she sort of went back home, didn't know what was going on, and then we see them obviously back at the graduation where this stuff happened. And it was just weird to read it, where they both moved on with their lives and they hadn't seen each other. There'd been no physical contact, a couple of phone calls and texts, and that was it. She meets him and it's quite brief. She quickly goes to the bathroom after meeting his friends. She tried to find him, he tried to find her, and they both thought that Tess thought that Hardin, and Hardin thought that Tess had just gone off their separate ways, and it wasn't the case at all. So that was quite frustrating to read. And then we jumped to, was it another 2 months later? Hang on. That's it. So then we jumped from June to September, which again is such a long period of time for them two as characters. She's in New York, she's waitressing, she's living her life. The contact again with Hardin and Tess has been quite infrequent. She hasn't enrolled in college yet. She doesn't really know what she's doing. She can't enroll until the spring anyway, so she's working as a waitress, getting her money under her belt. And then we see that Hardin comes to visit her for the weekend, and this is when I thought, okay, like this is where things are going to start like coming together again and things will be okay. It sort of was. We saw that Robert was back on the scene, which was the guy that worked in the cabin in book, I don't even fucking know what book it was. I want to say it was book 2. I think it was. Shows how much of brain time these books have consumed. So we saw that Robert was back involved, and again, I didn't like that. I didn't want him to be involved because I knew that it could be a temptation. Luckily it wasn't. But I knew that Hardin wouldn't like that. So yeah, it made me feel quite uncomfortable, the fact that he was back on the joint, but that is what it was. I liked reading how she was getting her life back on track in New York, but like I said to my friend Emmy, the reason why I love the book so much is the relationship they have together. Regardless of how toxic and dangerous and unhealthy it can be, I just loved them together. So I did, I struggled. I just didn't enjoy the parts apart as much as I do when they're together, if that makes sense. I love how Hardin was so adamant the fact that he wanted to marry her. He did a complete 180. And I found it quite funny actually how at the start it was always Tessa saying, I want to have children, I want to get married, blah blah blah, and he was like, no way. And then after everything that had happened, Hardin knew that that's what he wanted with Tess, and Tess was like, I don't know if I want it anymore, I don't know if that's right for me. Tess finds the binder that he wrote over the whole course of their relationship, and she sort of lost her shit at it. I don't really know why. I guess it's quite a personal thing, but she just went off. She didn't go off the rails, but she just, I don't know, she's a stronger person and didn't bow down to whatever he wrote. And he was like, just read it all and would put it all on the cards. The reason why he was in New York, obviously to see Tess, but was also to potentially get his book published, which we then obviously see that that's what happens in later life. When the last chapter in New York happened, it said, I gather every last bit of strength left inside me and leave the scattered pages on the floor of my apartment, the last page of the book still in my hand. I thought she'd find him and discuss, and then we'd just continue from there. We don't. We then jumped for 2 years later. Again, such another massive jump, like the biggest jump we've had. And I craved having that that groundwork, I guess, within that 2 years. 2 years is such a long time. Clearly, because Landon gets married. At the start of that chapter, I honestly thought it was Tess that was going to get married, but it wasn't. It was Landon. We see them seeing each other again for the first time in 2 years. Again, the contact and seeing each other has been minimal. I then read the part where they said that Tessa's boyfriend wasn't there, and that broke my heart. Luckily, they weren't together, but Robert was still there as a friend, even though I think he always wanted more, but she never gave him that because they both knew how she honestly felt, or really felt, about Hardin. It kept frustrating me whenever I read the space has been good for us. It's 2 fucking years. 2 years is such a long time. How much space do you need? Space to me is like, I don't know, like the summer, like it was, and it was, oh, I need more space. If you really love someone that much, you don't need like 2 to 4 years. That just, it was too much. I liked the whole wedding. I liked how we saw Harden in this completely different light. He changed from a boy to a man in this series. I like how he was with Smith, and he sort of accepted the big brother role, and I really liked how like tactile he was and how nice he was to people, and he still had that like banter relationship with Kimberly, and he obviously hasn't seen or done anything with anyone, vice versa with Tess. They are still meant to be together. They then obviously had that sex scene in the bathroom after the speech, and they were going to go and elope to Vegas to get married. I sort of thought something like that would happen, but then whilst the drive down there, Harden knew it wasn't the right thing to do, because he didn't want to deny her a quick marriage and not have her loved ones there, which is something that she would have resented him in later life. So I did like that. I thought that was really nice and really sensitive. The Vegas point is the epilogue. So then we jump, within the epilogue, we jump to 2 years from the Vegas scene of them going to go and elope. And again, such a long time. I couldn't believe like how quick the ending was getting churned out. I didn't know how the book was going to end. I didn't know how Anna was going to wrap it all up, because it was such like a massive world. So we see that Tess graduates from college, although she realised that's not what she wanted to do, which, like they said in the book, how can you figure out what you want to do so early on in your life, which is something that I struggled with. I still don't fucking know what I want to do in my life. How you are supposed to figure out so early on in your life what you want to do with your life, and then after 4 or 5 years you then realise, actually, I don't want to do that anymore. But she still graduated and she did really well. But after helping Landon plan the wedding, she realised that wedding planning is something that she wanted to go into. She just found that herself, and she developed it, and she found that passion and that career that she wanted. But then eventually Harden finally moves to New York. I wanted to see more. I wanted to see more of their relationship as a good thing. It's been so hostile and so toxic over the past God knows how many books I've read. And then for them to be like, so he moved to New York. I was like, can we please elaborate a little bit more? Can I please see like a couple of date nights, or you spending time like in New York and being young, like a young couple in love? And we didn't get that. And I was disappointed, I'm not gonna lie. It still hurts my heart now that we didn't get that. And then we go 2 years after that, in Harden's perspective, where they were trying for a baby and it didn't happen. They've been trying, and then she falls pregnant. As soon as she fell pregnant, I knew that was going to end in a miscarriage, because that little seed of doubt had been planted earlier on in the book. And that scene of her losing that baby, I think it was 3 or 4 months in, was awful. And I've got it up here. She screamed saying something was wrong. Panties on the floor, blood covered them. I gagged, unable to speak. I was on the floor next to her within seconds, holding her face between my hands. Everything will be fine, I lied. 30 minutes later we had the answer, blah blah blah, baby wasn't going to make it. Arden like packed up the whole of the nursery because he didn't want Tessa to hurt the next morning and things like that. But then they got the phone call to say that Landon's baby was coming. Then we go a year after that. She then falls pregnant. And then we go 6 years after that. It just jumped too much for me. It was just too much. They then had a 6-year-old. She was pregnant with her second boy. They still lived in New York. He was obviously an author. She was still doing her like wedding planning business. And then the final section was 10 years after that. So I don't even know how old they would have been, because it started when Tessa was 18 and Harden was 19 or 20. And now I don't even know how many years it is, because of how many years after that and years after that it was. But they have a 16-year-old daughter, and I don't even know how old their little boy was. And it just happened too quickly. The last quote, the last saying on Harden's perspective was, after everything we made it, whatever the hell of our souls are made of, they are the same. it just happened too fast. The ending was like, it was just so choppy, and I said that to Emmy. Like, Emmy loved it and Emmy cried her eyes out. But for me, the build up to that was so, like, each point was so well written. And then we had 1 year, 2 years, another 2 years, a couple of months, 6 years, 10 years. I wanted more development within them, putting the groundwork in for them and their relationship and their family and their life. That is what the whole start of the book was figuring out how we were going to go, and then we were just like, and they lived happily ever after. I'm glad that that's what happened. I'm glad they were pregnant. I'm glad they are living in New York and they're fine. But for me, there's so many questions left unanswered. They didn't get married. As from what I read, they didn't get married. I don't know the relationship that, like I said, Hardin has with his mum. I don't really know the relationship that they have with Ken and Karen, and whether they see each other that often with their children. I loved the relationship with Landon, how they were still living in like the same vicinity. Landon was their daughter's teacher. Like, I loved all of that. I loved the development that we had with Landon, but there was just so much more that I wanted because of all the groundwork that had been put in, and then we just didn't get it. And I hate feeling disappointed. I love the series, and it's a series that I'd love to forget and reread, and it's one that will stay with me for the rest of my life because I just loved it so much. It was so, like I said, so deep and so emotive, and it was just incredible. But I just wish I just got a bit more. I've still got Before to read, which, like I said, is book 5. And that might do a little bit more development for me. But I so wanted to come away feeling full, and I feel half full, half empty, and I hate that. The books were just an emotional roller coaster, and one that I will recommend to everyone because they were just so good. I would pay the $3.99 every single time. It was great. I'm going to wrap it up now. Leave me your comments and your thoughts below. Let me know how you found the ending. I wish more people had read it so I can speak to more people. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on the ending. Let me know if you think I'm just being too dramatic and wanting more when it was actually left on a really good note. It was left on a good note, but I just loved them so much. I just needed more. Oh, that's another thing. I thought they were both going to get the tattoos of like the infinity symbol, and that never happened. I wanted that to happen. I wanted more. I just wanted more. But hey ho. I really hope you've enjoyed this little mini series of me sitting down gushing about these books. I'm sorry if I haven't made that much sense, but they were just so good. I'm gonna do some research, Google my heart away now that I know how it ends. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all in my next one. Bye.